On the one hand, the war in Ukraine is making the already skyrocketing costs of energy increase dramatically.
If we look at the gas and the suppliers, Europe is today too reliant on gas. We import 90% of the gas we use, and this makes us vulnerable.
On the other hand, the transition to green energy may well put an end to our dependence on Russia, transforming geopolitical relations.
Europe's woken up to the fact that China's buying assets around the world, lithium, cobalt, and frankly, they don't play by the same rules.
The energy transition is going to be one of, if not the biggest drivers of geopolitical risk in the coming decades.
Energy transitions cause power shifts, and the next transition will be no exception. Countries that always depended on oil and gas now see new ways of generating sustainable energy within their own borders. Countries with rich stores of fossil fuels may see their influence decrease, and that will have consequences.
Elke industriële revolutie is darwinistisch van aard. Eindigt altijd met meer geld en meer macht in de hand van minder mensen.
What geopolitical cards will be dealt in a world no longer relying on oil and gas? What kind of new tensions will this transition period create? Welcome to a new world order.
Brussel is anders dan Den Haag. Je hebt nergens zoveel invloed als hier in Brussel. Ik heb mijn hele leven gezocht naar de plek waar je het meeste verschil kan maken. Tot nu toe is dat met afstand dit gebouw.
In Nederland denkt iedereen altijd dat gas er altijd is. Want we zijn opgevoed met het idee dat Groningen altijd aanstaat. Er kan een moment zijn dat het er niet meer is. Energie. En alles wat we op dit moment om ons heen zien. De lampen die aanstaan, die computers. Dit ding wordt opgeladen. Buiten staat iedereen daar in de file met een auto vol met benzine erin. Allemaal volledig afhankelijk van die ene grondstof. En als dat ophoudt, ja, dan hebben we wel met z'n allen een vrij groot probleem. Maar ik kom erop, daar wilden jullie het toch over hebben? Vooral?
Onder andere, ja. Maar überhaupt gewoon geopolitieke verschuivingen ten gevolge van de energietransitie.
Oké. Ja. Nou ja, nee, ik moest denken, topical noemen we dat. Want daar praten we nu natuurlijk, daar gaat die meeting zo meteen ook over.
Oh, echt waar?
Nou ja, we zitten natuurlijk met Rusland. Die houden straks gewoon op met gas leveren. Dat is precies de reden waarom we sneller hadden moeten overschakelen. Als we de Green Deal 10 jaar geleden waren begonnen, hadden we dit probleem vandaag niet gehad. Hey, hallo. Sorry. Als je voor 80% afhankelijk bent van je energievoorziening, basis van je samenleving, basis van je economie, basis van je welvaart. Als je daar voor 80% afhankelijk bent van de rest van de wereld, dan is dat geen gezonde situatie.
I have a few topics, but the most important one is the energy stuff from yesterday's meeting.
Yeah, so we had this first meeting about what is now called energy prices communication. It's becoming, I think, a little bit broader.
Basically, if you really think about it, energy underpins the foundations of the global economy and the international political order. If you think about oil in that context, people wouldn't dispute that, I don't think, that oil has played a huge role in shaping relationships between powers, in influencing when we go to war, when we come to peace, in deciding what countries and regions are strategic in nature. All of these things have related back to energy.
For decades, Europe has been dependent on fossil fuels from Russia and the Middle East. War and other conflicts create supply insecurity, while the reverse is also true. Ever since the war in Iraq, Megan O'Sullivan has studied the ways global politics are affected by fossil energy and renewable energy.
Now that the world is moving not just to new energy sources, but to a whole new energy system, in what, if the world is successful, will be record time, this is going to be a huge source of instability. So if you're interested in understanding geopolitical risk, to me, you almost have to take into account the energy transition.
Misschien hebben we een tijdje in de jaren 90 gedacht dat we elkaar omhelzend in de wereld allemaal verder zouden kunnen. Dat blijkt toch, hè, het eind van de geschiedenis bleek niet het eind van de geschiedenis te zijn. Dus de spanningen liepen eigenlijk al vanaf het begin van deze eeuw. Zie je dat weer oplopen en nu kom je weer in situaties die ik misschien niet eens heb meegemaakt als klein kindje in de jaren 70. Dat de Koude Oorlog op zijn hoogtepunt is en dat je opeens realiseert, verrek, die afhankelijkheid is bloedlink. Wij importeren een derde en soms in sommige jaren zelfs 40% van onze gas. Voor onze gasbehoeften importeren wij uit Rusland. Uit één land. Ja, dat is natuurlijk niet heel gezond. Slaapwandelend inderdaad hebben we die energieafhankelijkheid laten gebeuren. Het was ook heerlijk. We hebben er met z'n allen van geprofiteerd. En ons iets te weinig gerealiseerd wat er aan de andere kant van die muur staat.
Even as many people in Europe have repeatedly said, Russia has been a reliable supplier of energy for decades. The reality is Russia does have that ability, as it demonstrated 10 or so years ago by stopping the export of gas through Ukraine. It does have the ability to turn off that gas in the depth of a winter, which actually led to the loss of European lives. And people are acutely aware of that as they face this geopolitical moment, and energy is a real constraint.
We all see how crucial it is to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels such as gas, oil and coal.
A secure supply of Russian gas is still a delicate issue, as is clearly demonstrated once again by the conflict in Ukraine. In international politics, energy security is a controversial issue.
There are countries that are primarily consumers of energy, and so a big part of the question they're asking themselves is, how can we secure sufficient energy from outside sources to keep our economy going, to keep economic growth happening, to keep our people prosperous and happy with the political system? A great example of that is China. China has been for quite a few decades now a net importer of energy. And that energy is the vital link for economic growth in China, and that is the vital link to the legitimacy of the Communist Party in China. So the leaders of the Communist Party in China absolutely, as one of their top objectives, is to make sure that they can secure enough energy from the outside world to keep China growing, to keep the Communist Party in power, to keep people basically satisfied with that governance. And so the energy transition offers another energy path that can get away from all that imported oil and the geopolitics that comes with that. And similarly, in Europe, there's clearly a desire for an energy reality where Europe would be able to meet more of its energy needs.
We hebben op dit moment 2 grondstoffen nodig in Europa die we zelf bijna niet meer hebben en waar we ontzettend afhankelijk zijn van de rest van de wereld. Olie en gas. En daar moeten we vanaf. Deze gascrisis die nu boven ons hoofd hangt, is natuurlijk niet goed. Maar is wel functioneel om de gedachten weer wat te verzetten en te denken, hé, wacht even, we moeten toch echt iets anders gaan doen.
Heb je een datum? Wanneer zijn we niet meer afhankelijk van Rusland?
Nou, daar hadden we het toevallig net over. Dat kun je natuurlijk gewoon uitrekenen of dat ook daadwerkelijk werkelijkheid. Als je Fit for 55, het pakket waarmee wij onze economie decarboniseren, onafhankelijk maken, of minder afhankelijk maken van fossiele brandstoffen. Als je dat lijntje gewoon volgt, dus je gaat nu aan de slag, hard. Het is een heel ambitieus plan. Dan heb je zo ergens tussen 2030 en 2035... zou je Poetin kunnen bellen met de mededeling, we hebben het niet meer nodig.
There's no question in my mind that this energy transition is going to remake global politics. If you think about the key role that oil played in relationships, say the relationship between America and Saudi Arabia.
Crown Prince, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure to welcome His Majesty King Salman to the Oval Office.
as oil becomes less important, that relationship has changed somewhat and will probably continue to change. And at the same time, as other energy sources or other energy systems become more important, America and other countries will build relationships with countries that were previously on the back burner of geopolitics. So to give you an extreme example, the majority of the world's cobalt is produced in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this is a country which was not high on the list of foreign policy priorities for many of the great powers until cobalt became an absolutely essential input into many renewable energy technologies. Now, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has a lot more attention from China, from the US, from other places. So those are just two examples of many, many more that are going to show how relationships between countries change over the course of this transition.
Self-supporting energy, that is the dream. The current energy transition offers that opportunity. And so we see interest shifting away from fuels like oil and gas to commodities that we need for green energy, such as batteries and storage cells.
Elke energietransitie, elke industriële revolutie leidt weer tot een verschuiving van machtsevenwichten. De opkomst van OPEC is de meest pregnante verhaal in de geschiedenis van dat soort dingen. En nu, we hadden het er al over, met de nieuwe energietransitie zul je dat weer zien verschuiven. Lithium, zeldzame aarde, dat zijn eigenlijk de twee grote groepen, de twee grondstoffen. Je zou lithium dus ook een zeldzame aarde kunnen noemen. Al is het niet zo zeldzaam, maar we hebben er zoveel voor nodig dat het wel schaars wordt. Dat zijn natuurlijk de nieuwe grondstoffen waar we naar moeten kijken. Als je nu voorspelt wat de hoeveelheid lithium die wij nodig hebben om alle batterijen te maken die elektrische auto's nodig hebben, dan hebben we tot misschien wel 50 keer meer lithium nodig dan er überhaupt beschikbaar is.
One factor that is really going to shape geopolitics in the short to medium term is critical minerals, because there's such a dependence on this set of minerals for renewable energy technologies. And so there's not only the dependence, there's the reality that there are really insufficient levels of global production to meet anticipated global demand if the energy transition moves forward. And these minerals are also heavily concentrated in a very small number of countries. So if you put that all together, it all is a recipe for some disproportionate attention either around the countries or around the countries that produce them or the countries that process them.
We realiseren ons dat we dus minder afhankelijk zouden willen zijn van energiebronnen. En dus moeten we naar die bron die we zelf tot onze beschikking hebben. En toeval, die is dan ook nog eens duurzaam. Dus dat is mooi. Maar we realiseren ons ook dat om die nieuwe toekomst, die duurzame toekomst te kunnen realiseren, we ook de rest van de wereld heel hard nodig hebben. Het is heel moeilijk te voorspellen, want als je dus die extrapolatie van lithium zou doortrekken, zou je zeggen, dan wordt China. Chili is de grootste leverancier van lithium en een paar andere. Dan worden we 100% afhankelijk van Chili. Ja, dat is geen prettig vooruitzicht. Dat is een soort nieuwe Poetin-achtige situatie en dan ook nog verder weg.
It seems ironic. In order to make our energy supply sustainable, we have to go digging again. All over the world, old mines are being reopened and new reserves are being discovered. It's a green gold rush in search of strategic raw materials. The importance is huge, and the lessons from the past have been learned.
¿Cómo se ha avanzado? Y ahora estamos firmando ese proyecto de ingeniería a diseño final de la planta industrial de carbonato de litio.
Todo el mineral de litio que hay en el subsuelo de la patria, de nuestro territorio, es de los mexicanos.
En algún momento, compañero Echazo, hay que reconocer que nos ayudan algunos expertos internacionales, pero ahora nos hemos liberado.
Lithium is worth its weight in gold. But finding this precious raw material can turn out to be a curse. The pollution and expropriation of land resulting from this green gold rush cause social upheaval all over the globe.
Velika je tuča u celom svetu za litijum. Ogromna tuča. Neverovatna borba za apsolutno jednu od strateških sirovina u savremenom svetu.
What does it mean for a country like Serbia, now that a huge store of strategic raw material has been discovered. When it comes to lithium, will we see dynamics similar to the ones we know so well in oil and gas?
Srbija ga ima. Da li će da to koristi ili neće, to je druga stvar. Ali ga ima.
In Serbia's Jadar River Valley, we find the home of Zlatko Kokanovic. Zlatko's land has been in his family for many generations, but it happens to sit on a massive amount of lithium. Many local farmers have already sold their land to eager foreign mining companies, but not Zlato. He refuses.
Pa evo, mi se nalazimo u Gornjim Nedeljicama, znači gdje je planirano otvaranje rudnika projekat Jadar, kompanije Rio Tinto. Ja živim ovdje, a sva mi je zemlja dole u kompleksu rudnika. Njihov plan je da postave postrojenje prerade, znači fabriku prerade gdje će se dnevno drobiti 4-5 hiljada tona stenskog materijala koji će biti tretiran sa 1000 tona sumporne kiseline. Koristit će se oko 3,5 do 7,5 tona eksploziva dnevno. Zadnja 2-3 mjeseca su bila baš uzbudljiva. Nijedno večer nisam spavao više od 3-4 sata. A mogu li ja jedno pitanje? Da li bi dozvolila Holandija u Plodnoj dolini da uništi 20-ak sela i 15-20 hiljada stanovnika, da budu ugroženi, da uradi rudnik i da ostavi svu tu deponiju tu gdje jeste? Ne. Hvala lepo.
Ekološki ustanak poručuje da su njihovi glavni zahtevi ispunjeni i da oni obustavljaju blokade, a inicijativa Kreni promeni insistira na zabrani eksploatacije litijuma u celoj Srbiji i najavljuje seriju novih protesta. Prvi sledeći je u četvrtak ispred predsjedništva.
Zlatko Kokanović iz Gornjih Nedeljica uveren je da bez zabrane iskopavanja litijuma stvar nije gotova.
Nama nije bitno samo da ode Rio Tinto, nego da nikad niko ne dođe da rudari u našem kraju i da se trajno stavi zabrana na eksploataciju litijuma i bora na teritoriji cijele Republike Srbije.
What started out as local resistance on the part of Zlatko and his neighbors has now grown into a huge protest movement. Thousands of Serbs take to the streets to oppose the plans for the polluting lithium mines. The president makes an appearance on TV. Afraid of losing the approaching elections, he tries to de-escalate the situation, but all in vain.
Ovo je proizvodnja litijuma i ionskih baterija u Evropi, da ljudi mogu da vide koje se sve kompanije bave. Dakle, obratit ćete pažnju da su tu gotovo sve. Sad se upravo zato zašto sam ovo želeo da pokažem građanima Srbije, da bi razumeli da se bukvalno vodi pravi rat i da znaju da jedan deo razloga i za nemire i za ogroman novac uložen u Srbiju i upravo zato što je reč o ogromnom novcu.
At various moments in the history of the global economy, different resources are considered important, right? Because they're vital to the functioning of global production or to the energy sector. In recent years, lithium has begun to be considered a, quote, critical mineral, which immediately means that there is a politics and also a geopolitics swirling around this resource.
Thea Riofrancos studies the impact on the population of a country that is rich in lithium. She notices a worldwide change in mentality when green raw materials are regarded as strategic.
The reason that they've designated lithium this way is because it is important in the production of a key renewable energy technology, which is lithium batteries. designating a mineral as critical or strategic, it's partly about its use, but it's also partly about the geography of its supply, right? So when governments look at the world and say, where do these minerals come from? And they notice that minerals are concentrated, their production is concentrated in certain places, they begin to be more concerned about what's called supply disruptions.
I want to bring you guys to the edge so you see the pit now. What kind of shoes are you wearing? All right, here's a point where I want to show you guys. Oh, it's muddy. Oh. It's a question. Just to show you what people think of when they think of mining in Serbia and why they get nervous or scared or apprehensive. This is the environmental damage of the old ways, the old technologies, the old methods. This is the foundation of Yugoslavia was energy from these coal pits. So on the flip side, it provided them the economy they needed to be the country that it was, but I don't think it's the industry of the future. So we need to move away from these pits and this kind of damage and these types of fossil fuel industries that are damaging. And modern mining doesn't need to be like this. That's the goal. If it is, then I'm not interested.
Triggered by the global interest in lithium, various new mining companies try their luck in Serbia. Among them is Alexander Palkovski, owner of the Canadian-based company Euro Lithium and Boratis.
So this is all the sample material we've brought out of the ground through a drilling process, where we stick a pipe in the ground and bring it up to the surface. We mark each tray with where it came from, what part of the hole, what depth underground it came from. And this is where we start our process. Lithium is one of the most abundant elements on the Earth's crust, like water is, but to find fresh water you can drink, it's a much smaller percentage. And lithium's the same way. To find a lithium deposit that meets social, environmental, financial, and technical parameters, that's hard to find. There are lots of deposits out there of lithium, but do they make sense on all these different factors?
Right now, extraction of lithium is concentrated in Australia, Chile, China, and Argentina in, I think, that exact order, right? And so when these state actors and corporate actors, whether we're talking about the US government or Tesla, when they look out at the world, they say, well, there are 4 major lithium producers. That's not that many. If there's a coup or political volatility or, who knows, a climate change-induced weather emergency, and all of a sudden Chilean production is just out, well, then you have 3 producers, not 4, right? And so you get the idea that what's concerning to them is how the concentration of production, and what their goal is to diversify where production takes place. And their also goal is to have that production take place within their borders, so that they have direct territorial control and access.
Sommige landen hebben zich lang gekoesterd in, ik geloof dat er zelfs een officiële term voor was in Amerika, de splendid isolation. En dus lekker op onszelf. En de rest van de wereld deed er niet zoveel toe. Daar maakte de Tweede Wereldoorlog in 1 klap een einde aan. En daarna zie je dus een beweging die langzaam maar zeker tot een enorme globalisering leidt. En met een enorme geglobaliseerde value chain, waardeketen, waar alles op elk meest efficiënte punt wordt het onderdeel van een machine gemaakt. En dat dan allemaal bij elkaar gevoegd. En dan heb je de beste manier een machine gemaakt. Met een knopje uit Korea en een tandwiel uit China en een hendel uit Zuid-Afrika. Dat was het jaren 90 verhaal. En economen konden ook heel goed betogen dat dat ook de beste manier is om dingen in elkaar te zetten. En daar komen we nu weer een beetje van terug. Omdat we weten dat de wereld niet alleen door prachtige economische theorieën wordt geregeerd, maar gewoon door mensen. En daar dus allerlei andere dingen kunnen gebeuren die opeens de boel verstoren. Inclusief een virus.
We've had this COVID situation in which supply chains have gotten so snarled, and so states are stepping in to ensure economic production, right? And so all of these factors are playing a role, but you do absolutely see, I think, the parallel with fossil fuels in the US at least, being this kind of bellicose security discourse that we need to make sure we have our domestic reserves and we domestically extract and be a domestic powerhouse, first with oil and gas, and now this is being applied to these critical minerals as well.
We want the new strategic materials close to home, so the EU is also looking at its own backyard more carefully. Thanks to its massive lithium reserves, Serbia is suddenly in the spotlights.
There's a lot of potential in this whole area. The country has a lot of these types of basins, whether they're full of lithium and borates or not, that's to be explored and determined by these early stage explorers. You know, these young companies that go and look for something and try to find something.
It sounds to me a little bit like a gold rush.
Too early days to say. There is a lot of potential, but for there to be a gold rush, there has to be mining. Right now, there's no mining in Serbia for lithium. There's mining for copper and other things from past times, but at this point, it's just potential. Right now, the biggest challenge lithium resource development in Serbia faces is political.
Pitanje za vladu Republike Srbije i predsjednicu vlade. Da li vlada ili predsjednica ima informacije ili uveravanja od strane kompanije da je ista odustala od projekta Jadar i da li kompanija napušta Srbiju? Šta će biti sa kućama koje su u vlasništvu kompanije koje su urušene?
Ne, okej,
nas ne zanima da će država to da uradi u Rio Tinto. Nama je važno da oni odu, a država posle nek rešava te probleme.
The protests against the Rio Tinto plans to mine lithium were successful. Zlatko secured an audience with the Prime Minister. He prepares his questions at his lawyer's office. He wants rock-solid guarantees. Not a single gram of lithium is to be extracted from Serbian soil for the next 20 years.
Najvažnije pitanje je da li neće neko drugi doći da rudari umjesto Rio Tinta. Naš krajnji cilj je da stavimo trajnu zabranu na rudarenje u Srbiji i da se stavi zabrana na eksploataciju litijuma i bora.
Na primjer, Kinezi da dođu do...
Pa bilo ko, ne interesuje nas niko. Znači, nama je cilj da ne može niko da rudari u Srbiji litijum i bor.
Ovim putem prilažemo, u stvari, prijedlog zakona zabrane istraživanja eksploatacije litijuma i bora na teritoriji Republike Srbije sa obrazloženjem za koji predlažemo da se po hitnom postupku usvoji u Skupštini Srbije.
Znači, to je po meni izdaja od države nekoj stranoj korporaciji koja hoće da zauzme deo teritorije Srbije. Znači, taj deo koji su oni otkupili, to u dogledno vreme neće biti teritorija Srbije, znači to je bukvalno izdajnički osjećaj. Bukvalno smo izdati, znači, od strane države. Nalazimo se u mestu Brezjak, gdje je kompanija Rio Tinto došla da istražuje i eksploatiše litijum i počela je kupovinu kuća i raseljavanje naroda sa svojih ognjišta. Vidim te ljude koji su bili ovdje do pre par meseci. Znam ih svakog po imenu, u glavu, kad je ko rođen, ko je kome bio familija. To je bila jedna zajednica kumova i rođaka i familija, ali oni su se odrekli svega toga. Jedan vid psihološke borbe. Znači, nije rat, ali u suštini jeste rat na moderan način. Kada komšija koji je okružen sa 2-3 kuće bez krova i ostane sam, on bukvalno ne zna šta će od sebe i onda on podleže pritisku kompanije da i on proda. Pa žalostno. Nemam reči, znači to je.
The urgent need for an energy-independent Europe is so great that the local population is in danger of losing out. The global interests are simply too big. The desire for lithium too strong. Without this green gold, there will be no green transition. a gloomy scenario that governments prefer not to dwell on.
De eerste intuïtieve gedachte is, als je heel veel olie en gas onder de grond hebt zitten als land, nou, dan ben je spekkoper. Het is een vloek gebleken, in ieder geval voor de bevolkingen. Congo, Rwanda, Oeganda, de East Congo, het hele bassin daar, wat enorme hoeveelheden zeldzame metalen, met name, wat we nodig hebben voor mobiele telefoontjes, heeft. Dat is een vloek. Het is een vreselijke situatie. Dus je moet maar hopen dat we inderdaad op een andere manier met onze grondstoffen omgaan. En dat is ook weer onderdeel van de Green Deal, dat we nieuwe wetgeving ontwikkelen om die nieuwe materialen op een manier te winnen waarbij we laten zien dat we hebben geleerd van de fouten uit het verleden. We hebben onlangs een batterijrichtlijn, batterijverordening is het zelfs, dat is nog iets strenger. De batterijverordening neergelegd. En daarin zijn we ongekend ver gegaan met onze voorwaarden die we stellen aan de grondstof van die batterijen, lithium. De manier waarop het gewonnen mag worden, ook elders ter wereld, inclusief mensenrechten en al die andere ingewikkelde voorwaarden die we erbij stellen, inclusief de recycling daarvan. Die batterijverordening is echt wel een voorbeeld van hoe je met grondstoffen om moet gaan. En niet toevallig, hij gaat over lithium.
That's the starting point of every economy. It's the raw materials, whether it's energy raw materials like oil and gas and coal, or raw materials needed for defense or new technologies like electric vehicles and wind turbines. So Serbia is rich in these raw materials. Serbia is a European country, and China is growing its sphere of influence here. That's something that we have to be really wary of. And I know the EU is wary of that. They are aware of that. So that's why China's presence here it's concerning, and it's been flagged, and it's been the conversations being had within the European Commission. But is the European Commission moving fast enough? I'm sure it's political for sure. It's hard. It's challenging. There are issues still that need to be resolved, but I mean, China's moving faster than the EU right now. That's for sure. In 30 years, this may not be the same country. It'll be Serbia, but it'll be different. It won't be as European because you'll have more influence from the Chinese, and they're coordinated. They're moving. They are buying assets around the world: lithium, cobalt, and frankly, they don't play by the same rules than we do. We're playing a soccer game or football match, and we put 12 players on the field, and they're coming on with 100. The EU is aware of what's happening, but their hands are kind of tied because they're trying to satisfy all these environmental goals, which I completely respect and I agree with. But having said that, we have to do these trade-offs, right? I'm afraid that if we don't invest time and energy to even try, then the game's already over before it's really started.
There's a conventional wisdom, which I agree with right now, that China is poised to be the biggest winner of the energy transition. And there's a few reasons why China really seems to be best positioned of all the countries. And it has a lot to do with China's ability to innovate, but there are also some much more specific advantages that China has. Well, China has gone around the world pretty systematically, made deals with a lot of countries and a lot of mines to be the owners of the critical materials, whether it's cobalt or lithium or another critical mineral. And that really puts China in a position of potentially extraordinary influence.
Gek genoeg, als je goed naar China kijkt, dan zie je eigenlijk, en dat is ook heel logisch, dezelfde menselijke reflexen. Op zoek naar ontwikkeling, ontplooiing. Rijkdom is dat dan toch vaak. Zeker als je nog een arm land bent. En dan een exploderende economie. Zij hebben hun economie anders. Zij besturen hem anders. Daardoor zijn zij wel in staat om eerder zich aan te passen. En te denken, verrek, het gaat mis. Maar ze zien het niet veel eerder dan wij, hoor. Het is niet zo dat China veel eerder doorhad dat er iets mis was met fossiele brandstoffen dan wij.
It is increasingly seen that if your state, your jurisdiction does not have the supply chains for solar panels or wind turbines or electric vehicles, that you are losing the battle for who controls the next industrial revolution, right? So it's not just the inputs, the raw material inputs, it's the whole supply chain from mining all the way to end of life, recycling, right? Everything in between, logistics, manufacturing, consumption, right? The entire supply chain is seen as a terrain of geopolitical conflict and as necessary to secure, to invest in, quote unquote, at home, so that you don't lose this battle for who is the powerhouse of kind of where the global economy is going.
The Serbian president, under pressure from his people, has put a temporary stop to the mining plans. A core group of demonstrators gets together in Zlatko's village to celebrate. It's a victory, but the real battle is yet to come.
Možemo da stignemo na vreme?
Pa možemo, sad je 12:05.
Nam oko 2 sata.
Jedva čekam da čujemo od njih sad.
Da. A new spatial plan for Serbia contains 40 new mines. If one part of the world is trying to go green over someone else's back and someone else's children's health, that's something that I'm not okay with. Especially if it's mine. I mean, I love everyone, but of course there's priorities. I live here and I would like to live here, to continue living here, and I would like to have a clean environment. I want my kids to have clean environment. So basically that's the thing that's bothering me about this project, about lithium.
It sounds colonial.
This is a new age colonialism, and that's how we feel here, honestly. That's how we feel. And at the same time, you're trying to support something new. You're trying to support someone's plan to make this planet better, but is it really making it better if you just change one problem with another, So you're gonna for example, those companies are going to mine lithium here. And that lithium is going to be used for electrical cars. To be honest, people here don't have money for electrical cars. Some, of course, yes, but most, big percentage of Serbia is poor. We're not a rich country. So these cars are not going to be used here. So basically, someone else is going to drive electrical cars and have a clean air while we are turning into mine country.
Oh, it's windy. I love it.
Prije 1.5 godina niko ne bi verovao da bi šaka seljaka iz Nedeljica i okolnih sela mogla da oborimo prostorni plan područja posebne namene Republike Vlade Srbije. To je jedan veliki uspjeh za nas. Mnogi su nas iskorišćavali, zloupotrebljavali, potkačinjali, ali neka ih. I poruka za njih sve. Ako ne postupite po ovome, mi ćemo se ponovo vratiti na ulicu, jer to nam nije problem. Naučili smo se, oslobodili smo se straha. Srbi moraju skidati jaram sa vrata, dosta je bilo. Hvala vam, braćo, na svemu i do sad i od sad.
Serbia, if I'm not mistaken, is applying to become a member state of the European Union. I'm not saying that that is going to be determined by this lithium situation, but it's another angle on the interstate relations around lithium that we haven't talked about yet. We've talked about war, we've talked about conflict, right? But here's a situation which I think one of many things on the table is that if Serbia were to become a member of the European Union, the EU lithium reserves would suddenly expand because Serbia's lithium reserves would come with it. And then Serbia could be more directly connected in this EU-wide industrial policy to the building of a battery supply chain. It's an interesting factor to think about, even just in a hypothetical sense, there are various states on the border of the EU that might or might not become members of the EU, right? And the EU membership fluctuates over time. So are critical minerals going to become a factor in whether a state is considered, in a more friendly way, like, oh, it would be good if the state were a member of the EU because then we would have a nickel supply or a cobalt supply or a graphite supply. I cannot speak for the European Commission. I'm not sure that this is the way that they think about it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it crosses their minds.
I za kancelarku Merkel, da li je Nemačka zainteresovana za litijum u Srbiji? Ako jeste, koliko ćete biti istrajni u tome, s obzirom da interesovanje veliko pokazuju i Amerika i Kina?
Ja, wenn sich die ganze Welt interessiert, sind wir auch interessiert, ist ja klar. Und ich sag mal, wir haben ja sehr viele Investitionen auch im Bereich der Automobilindustrie jetzt in Serbien. Und wir wissen alle, was Lithium für die Entwicklung der Batteriezellen bedeutet.
A couple of months ago, Angela Merkel came and basically said that we have huge reserves of lithium. That's very important for Serbia, for Europe in general, for green agenda, for batteries, for everything that they want to use it for. So in that moment, it looked to us like it was kind of a moment of putting pressure. I don't know about even, but it sounded like that to me. Like, hey, I came to tell you that you have huge reserves of lithium. We need them.
I knew how much Europe needs it. I hated the thing that she came here to support the government that is doing bad things.
Some people are saying that this is a ticket for entering European Union. Most of people in Serbia in general are against becoming a member of European Union. But even those people that are not, like myself, I can give my honest opinion, that's my personal opinion, I still don't want this lithium to be mined, even if that means that we're never going to enter European Union, For me, lives of these people and water is more important than being a member of European Union.
So if theoretically there was a way to mine it in a sustainable way, you guys would be okay with it?
Of course, we can discuss it. Of course.
Triggered by their fear of environmental pollution, the worried locals dig in their heels. But what if lithium could be extracted in a clean way? One promising initiative can be found in the Upper Rhine Valley. It's a lithium mine that offers access to an enormous store of lithium, which can be extracted with a minimal impact on the environment.
All the car manufacturers want to get green. So what they need is green lithium, and that's what we are offering. And because we're the ones that are offering this green solution for lithium, the interest is very high in our technology and what we do. And as a matter of fact, we have signed contracts with Renault, with Stellantis, with VW as a major car producer in Germany to sell them our lithium. So we're sold out for the next 5 years, 6 years already.
So there is another way. Vulcan Energy removes the lithium from the hot subterranean water under the Rhine Valley. This means no huge holes will need to be drilled. In addition, the heat of the groundwater is used to generate electricity.
First of all, here we have one of the largest sources here in the Europe. What we do is really to extract the lithium with CO2 zero impact.
Would you say it's a gold mine?
A white gold mine, yeah. Yes. For us in Europe, I think that's, I would say that.
Lithium is sourced at the moment outside of Europe. We don't have any producing lithium company at the moment. So more than 80% of the lithium and the batteries is coming from China, and we want to be independent. We've seen that in Corona with the tests and everything, that it's really is harming Europe if they don't produce very important goods themselves. The potential of lithium in the Upper Rhine Valley is pretty big. The Graben system of the Upper Rhine Valley stretches over 300 kilometers north to south and 40 kilometers east to west, which makes it a real big resource. So if we even have less than 50% of the total area that we can use for lithium extraction, we still have the biggest resource in the world from geothermal. And when we produce lithium, we have the situation that we need energy for that. And the energy comes from the renewable energy of geothermal. And that is what makes us very special. And that is not just the CO2 that we save, it's also that the water consumptions, the area of land that we need, all waste that we produce is less than what other production of lithium means in China, in Australia, in South America.
So what you see here is the most important step in our process. This is the lithium extraction. What happens is that we take our brine coming from the earth, and this brine goes through this sorbent that can be compared, let's say, with a sponge. To win the lithium back, what we do is to wash the sorbent. And then what you get at the very end, is our product, lithium chloride in solution. So the lithium chloride is the pre-product that afterwards will be then will become the lithium hydroxide, and this is then our final product that will be then supplied to the battery. This is one of the purest form that you can see the lithium chloride.
We're going to start producing in 24, 25. We started out as two of us, the founders, and now we're 115 personnel. And at the end of the year, we expect to be 200, 250 personnel, which means not just the demand is growing, also, our personnel is growing. We could maybe produce the lithium for all of the German industry, but not for the European industry, which is much bigger. I think we could maybe produce 25% of the lithium needs of Europe.
Lithium is one of the raw materials we will badly need if we want our transition to succeed. But it's not enough. If we really want to secure our energy independence, we'll have to keep looking.
Die ontwikkeling hebben we ook met olie gezien. Hè? De voorspellingen van de Club van Rome waren dat het over 30 jaar op zou zijn. Nou, toen zijn we als een malle gaan zoeken naar nieuwe olievoorraden. En weet je wat, we hebben er ook heel veel gevonden. Meer dan we überhaupt kunnen opstoken in onze atmosfeer. En bij lithium zou dat ook zo kunnen gaan. Dat lijkt me, dat is een reflex en die zie je altijd gebeuren, ook vandaag de dag. Maar de betere reflexen, die proberen we via de Green Deal ook te bevorderen, is innovatie. Op zoek naar die batterijen die je gewoon van aluminium kan maken. Of van andere metalen. Of andere keramische materialen. Waardoor je dus veel minder afhankelijk bent van die ene grondstof.
We're already beginning to see a lot of creativity. We're seeing America start to do that. We're seeing places in Europe start to do that. And I expect we'll see more and more of that. Over time, my sense is that we will find substitutes for lithium. We will find better ways of recycling lithium. So the gold rush, I guess no gold rush lasts forever, but it's not going to be a permanent reality here, but it certainly is going to be a very significant one for the coming years, because these things can't be started overnight.
Klaas van Egmond, oud-directeur van het RIVM en later hoogleraar, die had ooit een mooie vergelijking. Die zei namelijk, Diederik zei, de mensheid is geneigd om altijd op de muur af te rennen en dan net voordat ze te pletter slaat, vindt ze iets om eroverheen te springen. Malthus met zijn voorspelling dat we aan de honger zouden doodgaan en toen vonden we nieuwe gewassen uit en kunstmest en hop, eroverheen. Hij zei, er is één punt. We gaan elke keer harder en de muur wordt elke keer hoger. Dus we maken het wel elke keer spannender. En nu maken we het wel heel spannend. Dus we zijn er nog niet. Ik weet dat we hoger kunnen springen dan ooit. Dus we kunnen meer dan we ooit konden. Maar de muur waar we tegenaan dreigen te klappen is ook wel enorm. Klimaatverandering, biodiversiteit. We zijn misschien wel te laat begonnen. Nee. We zijn zeker te laat begonnen. Maar misschien halen we het nog net.
Imagining a net zero world 2050, a world where there isn't any net carbon emissions, I can imagine the geopolitics of that world being, quite copacetic, because we will have found ways of getting more energy to more populations around the world, presumably at lower costs, and hopefully in ways that create less difficult and costly webs of dependence. And so the end goal, I think, is one to really aspire to. Not to say there won't be complications, but certainly if I were forced to place a bet, would I prefer the geopolitics of oil and gas or the geopolitics of the new energy transition? I'd pick the latter.